Abhinav, if I can please invite you up to the stage to moderate our first power-packed panel discussion. This is a keynote session, Building a Data Ethos, where we have chief data officers joining us from leading companies and the government sector to share their thoughts and leveraging data to increase business value. Let's put our hands together for Abdulrahman Ibrahim, Chief Data and Innovation Officer at Madinah Region Development Authority. Before joining the public sector, he was a Chief Executive Officer in the private sector with 22 years experience in various industries such as consumer goods, food manufacturing, medical supplies, and supply chain. He is a board member of state-owned Saudi companies, and he is the co-author of Cities in a Time of Global Emergencies, Can Smart Cities Help? We have Emmet Kelly, Chief Data Officer from YAP Global, as our next panelist. Welcome. He has 35 years experience working with finance, telecoms, loyalty, and FMCG data. He has held director positions in banking and telecoms corporations in Ireland, the UK, and the Middle East, namely with Meteor, AIB, Barclaycard, and Do. Let's welcome Engineer Abdulaziz Nasser Alkhlaif, Deputy CEO at Taib Healthcare Company. He is a veteran with 25 years working in the ITC and information management field, and 15 years in the HIT, Healthcare Information and Technology. He is a futurist working with local agencies to fulfill the goals of digital transformation for hospitals. And completing our distinguished lineup, we have Aseel Albutti, Head of Business Technology Platform for Middle East North Region from SAP. Aseel is a trilingual innovation catalyst who was recently appointed as the first woman sales leader in her region at SAP. She is passionate about driving regional, transformational, and incremental innovation with business and platform strategy. And with that being said, Abhinav, the floor is all yours. We look forward to very interesting discussions.
Thank you, Noura. Thank you so much, and thank you for our panelists for joining us today. I'm going to jump straight into the conversation, and I'm going to ask a very cliched but a very profound question. The first question is, according to you, of course, we all have read, seen, and probably it has changed for all of us, but how has the role of a CDO changed in the region compared to what it was 3 years back? Mr. Abdulrahman, I'll start with you.
Thank you very much, Abhinav, for having me today. Thank you very much, everyone, for your interest in joining us. Well, I don't know why did you choose 3 years specifically.
You know why.
Why?
I mean, I'm talking about before the pandemic and after the pandemic.
Oh, okay. Well, by coincidence, on the national level in Saudi Arabia, in 2019, 3 years back, the Saudi Data and Artificial Intelligence Authority was established. In the same year, again by coincidence, I'm from Madinah Region Development Authority. We restructured the whole entity, and we initiated data and innovation sector that reports directly to the CEO. The data was perceived in the region, in Madinah region, and on the entities level from two angles. It's either a supporting function, the guys who will bring the data, and the strategy guys, the experts will analyze them and make decisions, or from a pure IT perspective, cloud, storage, etc., etc. But in 2019, we've decided to make data as a core function, not a support anymore. And in this flow of the process of the operating model of Madinah Region Development Authority, data comes first, where we collect, analyze, and provide insights to the remaining flow of the process of the organization, to the strategy, to the urban planning, socio-economic development. So the data became the core function, one of the core functions at Madinah Region Development Authority.
Thank you. Emmet, I'm going to come to you with the same question. How do you see the role of CDO has changed in the last 3 years?
Well, thank you everybody for coming, and we have to do all the thank yous. Thank you. I think it's changed completely. I remember, 4 or 5 years ago, data was seen as a cost and very much akin to reporting for finance, a bit of marketing data, lots of data silos, market research data was never included. And it was run by people who were considered to be clever but expensive, and nobody quite knew what they did. And that was not really what happened. And then we had the super value of companies like Uber and Airbnb, where the data itself, knowing about the customer, was the value of the company rather than the value of the data for reporting or for optimization or for churn management and that sort of stuff. So that was a tectonic shift, and people could see that in the Financial Times. The pandemic hit, and it made it very real. People knew they needed data. They knew that it would change their lives. It changed the value of property in cities and in rural settings. Data was suddenly moving the economy. Okay, and then after the pandemic, suddenly I didn't have to sell data. I didn't have to evangelize quite so much. Everybody knew it was valuable. They'd used it. It became real in terms of value. And it meant that I could hire the right teams. The software was better. The usability was better. There was less coding. You could automate things. AI was now expected by customers rather than being some magic dust that you put across every PowerPoint presentation. It meant that your world was personalized. So the data came, really into a very real world experience for people within the company and outside the company, and the CEO suddenly knew there was value in it, and data was oil, as people said. So that changed things. But then only in the last couple of months, obviously the world has changed with geopolitical situation. So we will revert very, very soon, if not already, towards delivering value. And data will be about delivering value for our customers. It'll be about uptime, it'll be about latency, it'll be about personalization and reporting everywhere and anywhere, but also security, data residency, compliance, governance, the ability to be audited. All of these things become terribly, terribly important right now, whereas they weren't really spoken about quite so much. Obviously in Barclaycard and Barclays, where I worked, data governance was huge. They could afford it. They had whole teams of people to do it. But now it's going to be true and be necessary for a lot of smaller businesses and even startups. Everybody has to be auditable. Everybody has to be compliant. And data is now, the blood that makes the businesses work. I think that's how it's changed.
Thank you, Emmet, for that answer. I'm going to come back to you, but I'm going to go to Engineer Abdulaziz first. Engineer Abdulaziz, what we see right now, that a major change organizations are pushing towards is being more data savvy, not just being data comfortable, but more data savvy. Now, how can a CDO help create that environment where the organization becomes more data savvy?
Working in the healthcare industry for the last 15 years, you could see a huge shift into trying to understand the data that we are generating. As a sector of information and health information, we are one of the biggest sector that provide and produce data inside any organization as an isolated entity. Add on it, you will have a lot of external communication from outside and information. It's a sea of data that we are seeing. Now, what this introduction has, leading up is that the C-level in all organizations that I have worked on or work in, they're seeing a huge, value of understanding their data. And this is the discussion right now we could see in the boardroom. And they are looking at the dashboard from each individual system, and then also the cross between different systems to each other. So we're trying to make sense of the data as it says, not as a set alone or standalone by itself, but as a comparative data between each other. So we're trying to understand the data from as a client getting the service, and then as we deliver the care to the patient. Now, that's a huge shift of understanding. Usually in hospital, everybody think that everybody should work together. But really, it's an isolated silo approach when everybody is looking at their own data. And then when you cross-check all of those data together, you'll have huge benefit. We're seeing over the last 5 years, the understanding from the leadership is jumping bounds into saying, I like to see the whole experience of the patient, not only when I deliver this type of service. So that's a huge change in the mindset of everybody looking at data. Data right now is the source and decision pushing. When you say that, where do you make your decision? They take it based on data. That's shift is happening right now because accessibility to data is far more accessible right now than 5 years ago.
I think I agree that we see the shift happening right now where the data-driven insights have more prominence. Emmet, the same question to you. How do you see a CDO playing a role when it comes to making their organizations more data savvy and not just data comfortable?
To me?
To me, yes, sorry.
More data savvy? Well, I think, this is a bit of a bugbear of mine, and I'm going to be talking about it in my speech. I think the way we communicate data is a little bit wrong. Often when it's communicated, it makes the speaker very powerful because they understand the data, and they understand the statistics, and they understand where the data works. And often the communication of the insights from data is complicated. And then when it's presented as a bar chart or a graph or a trend or a number. I'd say 20% of the room understand what's been said. I'd say 20% understand some of it, but they'll forget most of it, and the rest probably don't understand it. But if you give people information in terms of bar charts and numbers and trends, it's not very memorable. You can't talk about it. Nobody remembers bar charts. Memory is visual. Memory comes from stories and pictures. So I think to democratize data, we have to turn it into stories that make common sense, that are memorable, where people can identify with a person or a stereotype or a situation, even if it's just one customer who's having a good time or a bad time or uses it that way. Then give the percentage, but just take for granted that people are going to forget the percentage. Okay, you have to move the business, and then you also have to have the humility to know that your percentage is based on the data that you have available. There's a whole lot more variables at play. There's always more data. There's always more information. So I think the people who communicate data need to be humble in the communication, and I think it's better to accept that you don't know everything, but this is an interesting story. This is an interesting piece of information, and that way the data will be valued, will be remembered, and will be spoken about. But you bring people into a room and you show them, 90-slide presentation with loads of charts. You've lost them in 5 minutes.
True. Aseel, I'm coming to you now. I think as the data leaders work towards, they're in the pursuit of a robust data roadmap, and they're building a roadmap for the organizations. What is that one strategy that you feel will serve them really well, or what is that one strategy that you have seen that works really well that you're a fan of?
Perfect. Thank you, Abhinav, and Assalamu alaikum jami'an. Actually, I have two strategies instead of one, if you allow me.
Please.
So we talked about data, and we talked about a strategy of a data when it comes to data cleaning, quality, and making sure it is well maintained. But to be honest, I see the shift of a strategy and the focus is leaning also towards data quality and data innovation when it comes to thriving democratization and having economy thriving towards this. And not just only that, even a strategy, when it comes to a data strategy, we are leaning towards an organization literacy focus. So let's say CDOs are leaning towards innovation, are leaning towards business values, where it's not just an IT or it's not just a technology driven, but it's actually a data capability. So in a very nutshell, if you ask me, what is your main core strategy? It is the data sharing, because we have seen organizations, they have the data, they thrive on it, but it's very siloed within each department. They are not sharing it, they are not monetizing it, and they are not utilizing it as its best. So sharing is a key in order to be driven, not just from a technology perspective, but business values and different segments of an organization.
Thank you so much, Aseel. Mr. Abdulrahman, I will come to you with the same question. As you're working on the roadmap, data roadmap for your organization, what is that one strategy that has served you really well, or maybe that one strategy that you're a big fan of?
Okay. Can I have two, like her?
Yeah, please. More the merrier.
Okay, I will build on Mr. Abdulaziz's point, the silos. If we imagine the silos on enterprise level, you can imagine how complicated it is on a city level, or a regional level, or on a national level. Let me take it very simple on ourselves, on the city level. Each city department works in a silo in terms of processes, systems, and data. The municipality, traffic department, police department, the utility companies, water company, electricity company, etc., etc., etc. If we imagine the city as a human body, as a human body I want to stand up, different parts work in synchronization. Unfortunately, cities don't work like this. They work in silos. So what we did in Madinah is to establish a horizontal platform to connect the required data, not all data, of different silos, and break those silos in terms of data. And no need to change or standardize the processes and systems. It's impossible to standardize everything. Consequently, we need an open data strategy standards, and we need to adopt a common language in the data models that we share among different silos. This is the one strategy that we are adopting, and basically, consequently, Madinah was the first city to establish and implement Aseel. Aseel is the first smart city platform in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, common data language is your strategy, and my last question for the panel as well. Coming to you, Engineer Abdulaziz, I think one key aspect which organizations always seem to be lacking at is the ability to communicate the business of data, right? Now, why do you think that is the case, and how can it be changed? Because data is important, everyone's working on it. So why is it that organizations are still finding it difficult to communicate that, you know, the value of the business of data?
Well, I think the touch on silos is very important. When you see data as a separate entity from the whole organization, you will not see a value with it. The second that you cross-check the information from different sources, trying to find out where is that source of truth, then you could see the benefit coming to the organization. The organization doesn't see the value from data that is segmented, that is incorrect, inconsistent. So that's the whole challenge right now. Finding that source of truth, making the leadership trust the data that you generate. It's coming from one source, cross-reference. That's the whole point. When you cross-reference or make it visible for everybody, everybody will check their own data. Everybody, let's agree that everybody is very, proud of their work, proud of what they do. So if you give them the chance to have it in front of them to verify it, they will do so. So exposure or visualizing this data is a good start to having the value of the data presented to the organization. And from there, you could go ahead and have the right platform to convince any leaders, any organization of the value of the data.
Aseel, Engineer Abdulaziz said that visualizing the data and having him present in the right way is where you start from, then you go forward. What is your take on the same question? How do you communicate the business value of data?
Yeah, to be honest, I couldn't agree more, and I can echo what the gents are mentioning. But from my perspective, it's all coming from the perception of data. Unfortunately, we are seeing that data perception is coming usually from IT departments, or it comes solely from that area. And it's actually the contrary. And this comes back to my strategy point, where we really need business users in order to fluctuate these data, in order to have a more monetized and let's say a formula of sharing where it is a reciprocal relationship rather than just one department or a one division. So I think having the business models coming or business values coming from different departments, it really boosts the innovation and it boosts the business cases, and it really gives a sense of not just the accuracy in the decision making, but actually the speed. Accuracy of decision making has become establishing, and it's becoming the new norm in our disruptive world. So we need to look about agility, scalability, and speed, and this is where it comes from different segments of functionalities.
Thank you so much. I think also in the essence of time, the last question I want to ask each one of you, but if we could have a quick one-liner on that, if possible, is that data literacy is seen as a game changer when it comes to implementing a data-driven culture. Now, Aseel, I'll start from you. How do you enable a common data language, which Mr. Abdulrahman was speaking about, across the organization or across the enterprise? How do you enable that?
Yeah, thank you, Abhinav. I mean, all what we discussed, it really leads to data literacy, because this is the mindset of CDOs or across all functions, to be a more data literacy organization and actually to build an open data culture. So when you establish this culture and this mindset, it comes within from a strategy, priorities, functions, and it cascades below. So having the flexibility of data, the scarcity of it, at the same time protecting the data and actually exploit it enough to be used in a better form and in a more secured manner. So I think all of these pieces is really leading towards the literacy, and it's the evolving way of how we deal with data.
Thank you so much. Engineer Abdulaziz, how do you enable a common data language?
Well, I think the data literacy is also part of the digital literacy that we are running in every organization. Being aware of the power and the value of data is a good start to establish with all our employees. And running a training program that will have that ability, because you will always work on the two aspects of every empowerment, the ability and willingness. If people have the ability, they will develop their willingness. So I think that part of having a place to get trained about how to mine the data, how to segregate the data, how to get value from the data is a good start. And it's not only for IT or data, analysts or anybody. It's for everybody. From our experience, we could see a huge value of sharing this information to nurses and other health care providers, because they do have their own way of collecting information. Now, if they have, a means or a tool, of course, they will be proud to share this information, and from there, we could make sure that this information is correct, cross-referenced, and shared.
Thank you so much. Emmet, your take on it. How do you enable that common data language for data literacy?
Two things. Firstly, understand who owns the data. We know from what's happened in the last few years around the world, and from Cambridge Analytica, the data belongs to the customer. The data is about the customer, it describes the customer. If the customer wants to take their data, that's great. We get the reporting, but we don't get the data. okay? We can report, we can analyze, we can trend. If we communicate, we have to use tokens. We're not allowed to use PII, okay? So the data belongs to the customer. That's the first thing. The second way to evangelize it and democratize it around the organization is to bring in younger people. Younger people take data for granted. They know how servers work. They know how they're more financially savvy than most of the people I work with. They take for granted that they need devices and they need to connect. They can all use Wi-Fi. They can all use networks. We're talking about not digital natives. I'm talking about metaverse natives. Bring in younger people who expect this to work. Okay, because if we look around the room, myself included, we're not really digital natives. We need to populate any organization with people who take all this stuff for granted. That will really help.
Thank you so much, Mr. Abdulrahman.
Well, let me answer this question in a small story.
Sure.
In the past 5 to 7 years in Madinah, people were dissatisfied with the healthcare services. And the governor and the mayor were pushing the central government agencies, the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Health, to expand the healthcare services in Madinah. And they were not getting enough funds. In the past 2 years, when we considered data to have insights to address this issue, we've realized that Madinah has an indicator of 205 beds, hospital beds, per 100,000 inhabitants. But what does this mean? It's just an indicator. If we benchmark it versus other cities, we've realized that we are slightly behind Riyadh, 207 beds per 100,000 inhabitants. So we are almost like Riyadh. So what is the problem? And we are ahead of Dubai, 185 beds. We are far ahead of Mecca, 135 beds. So the problem is not in the number of beds or number of hospitals. The more we dig, we realize that it's about the specialties. So it completely shifted the direction from number of beds, number of hospitals, and asking for funds to establish more hospitals, to acquiring more physicians in certain specialties. This small example, we are capitalizing on it with all stakeholders in the city to make informed decisions based on data rather than just of the complaints of the citizens.
Thank you so much, and I think we're ahead of time. So I would like to thank our panelists once again for joining this session. I believe it was pretty insightful for our attendees as well. Thank you so much, and they would be available in the networking break for you to interact with them for any questions that you might have. Thank you so much, and can we have a big round of applause for our panelists today?
Thank you.
Thank you.